Welcome to Distressed to Joyful, Bailey's Way. I'm your host, Bailey Raber, here to enlighten you and the rest of the world about one of the most misunderstood mental disorders out there, bipolar disorder. Each week, we're going to learn more about my personal journey with the disorder while leaving you enriched with new information on how you can help better yourself as well as those around you. Hey everyone! Okay, so normally I start out the episodes by kind of going over the topics for today's episode, but I think I'm just going to skip that this time and just jump right on in. I just don't see it necessary for this episode, and we'll see moving forward. So if you remember from last week's episode, I was absolutely devastated that my boyfriend, who I had just lost my virginity to, decided to bounce out of this relationship. I felt unwanted, hurt, used, and just so alone. I was also ashamed of what I had done and the fact that he just so easily left the picture after I gave him something of mine that no one else could have. Okay, now let's throw in some more bullshit to make this entire situation even worse. So while I was on birth control at the time, I wasn't taking it regularly like I was supposed to have been. And Dumb and Dumber over here didn't think that we needed a condom to have sex. Yeah, smart, huh? And side note, in my opinion, the lack of sexual education, not only in America. Wait, did I say sexual? I meant sex education. You know what I meant. Okay. But the lack of sex education, not only in the United States of America, but just on a global level, is just absolutely insane. Y'all, it is 2020 now. Come on, people. Get it together. Now, if I had been typing that, there would have been little hand clap emojis in between get it together. So just take it in like that's what I said. All right. Okay. So back to the aftermath of losing my virginity. So I'm sure you're wondering where this ties in with my bipolar disorder, right? I mean, come on, this whole entire podcast is based upon my journey with bipolar disorder. So, since Dumb and Dumber, and if you haven't already guessed, that's what I've nicknamed myself and boyfriend at the time, because even though the sex education isn't the greatest, we both still damn well knew better. But since we decided not to use a condom, and I hadn't been taking my birth control regularly, we both were kind of freaking out about the possibility of pregnancy. Again, we were 16 and we had minimal knowledge of sex at the time, but what we both knew was that I could not end up pregnant. So, in order to be sure of that, we figured I would just take the Plan B pill and just nip that shit in the bud. So, in other words, take the pill and make sure that I could not become pregnant. So I'm going to just assume that most of you out there listening know what Plan B is and what that pill is used for. But if for some reason some of y'all listening are unaware, Plan B pill is a emergency contraceptive. So basically, like if you have sex and, how do I put this so it doesn't sound so awkward and uncomfortable? I mean, I don't think there's any other way to say this. So I'm just going to be me and just be blunt about it. I hope you're ready. So if you're having sex and the condom breaks and you're unsure of whether or not the sperm cells, stayed inside your vagina, then you take Plan B pill and it kind of stops any fertilization from happening. There's regulations behind it, like you have to take it within 72 hours of the pregnancy scare. Well, not pregnancy scare because... yeah, that one makes sense. So you take it within 72 hours of the whole condom break scare, I guess I should say. And then it's supposed to keep you from getting pregnant. Like it stops your whole hormone cycle or something crazy like that. And it's supposed to be for emergency use only. I'm going to say that one more time. It is for emergency use only. Clearly states on the box and the website that it should not be taken in place of regular birth control. I'm not a spokesperson for Plan B. I just want you to know because I don't want you to make mistakes. At the time, you had to be 17 or older to purchase this pill, which nowadays is not the case. But because I was 16, I had to embarrassingly, oh gosh, it was so embarrassingly reach out to a friend of mine who could do the deed for me. And by do the deed, I mean go buy the pill for me, because it's awkward either way. I mean, whether someone's buying it for a friend or someone's buying it for themselves, buying that, especially when you're young, is just not a fun feeling. I'm sure some of you out there have experienced that and know what I'm talking about. So once I got my hands on it, I just took the damn thing. I didn't read the instructions. I did. I read that, you have to take it quickly and that you could throw up. But that's all I did. Like, I didn't really research. I didn't look into it. I just knew it was going to keep me from getting pregnant, or was supposed to keep me from getting pregnant. So I just took it. But I didn't consult my doctor or anyone actually before doing this besides that friend. And I wasn't even consulting that friend, because even more embarrassing is that the friend that I asked to buy this for me, who was 17 or older at the time and could legally purchase it, he was a dude. Yeah. And we weren't even good friends, because I was a junior in high school and he was one of the only juniors in my high school class at the time who was 17 or older, because most of us were still 16. So I just asked the only person that I knew who was over the age of 17, so 17 or older, and asked him to go do it for me. And I think I had to pay him or something crazy like that. And it was just weird and uncomfortable. Yeah, and I just don't recommend that for any of y'all. Yeah, please don't go through that. Please, yeah, keep listening so you learn what to do instead. Learn from my mistakes. So because I didn't consult my doctor or any trusted adult beforehand, for that matter, I was unaware how Plan B could affect me mentally and how it wasn't safe for me to do it without consulting someone else first. So let's talk about what I experienced during that moment. So first of all, my emotions literally went haywire. They went out of fucking control. Once I got it in my system and it started, like, the pill started absorbing, I guess, into my bloodstream, things just only seemed to get worse. Uncontrollable crying happened first, and God, that was awful. I've talked about uncontrollable crying outbursts in the past, like in episode 6, in episode 5, I talked about that, how I would just kind of burst into tears at random. No, this was way worse. This was like sobbing. And have you ever just like cried really hard where like your whole body could feel it? Like maybe you lost someone you loved, or like you lost a pet, or you broke a bone, or like if you're me, if you stubbed a toe, because that I'm such a baby and thank God I've never broken a bone before. But just think about a time when you've like cried so hard that your whole body just hurt. And that's how this was, except it just happened and it just wouldn't stop. And I just didn't know how to make it stop. And the worst part was that I had to do this quietly to myself in my room so that no one in the house would hear me and come ask me why I was crying. That was because if someone were to hear me, they would come in and start questioning what I was crying about. I would have to make up some story because I couldn't tell them what was going on. So speaking of not being able to tell my parents what was going on, let me backtrack a little bit. So at the time, especially, they were super conservative, and sex before marriage was not allowed in their household. Yeah, you heard that correctly. Sex before marriage was not allowed in their household. So we'll discuss the extremities of that in future episodes, especially when they did find out that I actually was having premarital sex in their household. That's a whole nother fun ball game. But because they were so strict and like hardcore about that alone, I couldn't talk to them about this pickle I had gotten myself into, which meant I had no one to talk to about it. And when I say no one, I mean no trusted adult that could help me navigate through this sticky situation. Because let's be real here, a 16-year-old who needs advice on anything relating to sex should not be asking another 16-year-old for advice relating to sex. Refer back to episode 6, and you'll remember why I say that. But all of the adults that I did have in my life at that time, I couldn't trust to tell this secret to. And that was because they all knew my parents, and I feared that one of them might tell my parents. It's like you go tell, I don't know, your aunt something that you did, and you say, don't tell mom. And then what do? They turn around and tell mom. Like, that's what I was fearing. And I feared that because since this was not allowed under my parents' roof, I was not sure how they would treat me after finding out. But more importantly, I wasn't sure how they would punish me. Yeah, they would punish me if they had found this out. So I just kept all of it to myself. And the few friends I had at the time, I just felt like I couldn't tell them because I didn't want them to judge me. I was so fucking ashamed of what I had done. And I was in the middle of a shame shitstorm, as Brene Brown would call it. And it was fucking terrible. And it was also so lonely. But before we get into that, let's discuss why it was unsafe for me to keep this little pickle that I was currently in all to myself. So first of all, I took Plan B, which is a progestin. I don't think I pronounced that right. I'm going to try that again. A progestin-only emergency contraception. Wow, that was a mouthful, and I hope you understood what I said. If not, you can check the show notes for the resources on Plan B pill and read those words quietly to yourself. Anyways, I took the Plan B without consulting my doctor first. And as required by the FDA, over-the-counter drugs administered by pharmacies state consult with your doctor before use on the back of their bottles for a goddamn reason, y'all. They don't just put that there for fun. I mean, they put that there because they're required to, but they're required to put that there for a reason. And that's because drugs have side effects, and it's really important to know how they will react to your body in combination with your current state of health, as well as any other negative reactions that could occur due to being on other drugs or medications at the same time. I hate using the word drug. I hate that. So that sentence when I said may occur due to being on other drugs at the same time, just replace that word drugs with medications. Drugs just sounds weird. Say no to drugs. That DARE program, that's why I don't like that word. That's besides the point. Anyways, so basically, you need a pro to tell you if it's safe to do what you're planning to do before you actually do it, because you are not a pro. Yes, you are in charge of your own life, sure. But unless you have MD or PharmD attached to the back of your name, you do not know how these drugs will react to your body. So ladies, if you've never taken the Plan B pill before and you are going to do so in the future, I mean, you can't plan your future, but if it happens to come around and you need to take it for your own personal reasons, please consult with somebody first, specifically a doctor if possible. Okay, so let's kind of review what happened to me. So a possible side effect that was listed on the back of the box said bad cramps and vomiting. Again, okay, I'm weird about words, y'all. So the word vomiting, I also hate that word. But saying throw up sounds very childish. But I think I'm still going to use the term throw up. So you're just going to have to get over that if you hate that little kid phrase. Because I don't like the word vomiting. Ugh, no. Okay. So side effects were having bad cramps and throwing up. And I remember those two clearly. There were probably a couple others listed. They just weren't anything that I experienced. But what was not listed as possible side effects was the uncontrollable crying and also feeling the most depressed I had ever felt at that time. Okay, y'all, so I just want to make note right quick that bipolar disorder has the tendency to cause emotions felt by the individual to be heightened. So let's break down what that means. An emotion like happiness or sadness that is felt by an average person is sometimes felt 3 times stronger by somebody who deals with bipolar disorder. Though keep in mind, this might not always be the case. Now for me, it definitely is the case. So for those of you who know me and you've met me in person before, I want you to take a moment to try and remember a time that you've been in my physical presence. Try and remember what emotion I was feeling at the time. Was I angry? Was I happy? Was I sad? Hopefully, for everyone's sake, I was happy. But try and remember how it felt to physically be there in my presence while I was feeling that said emotion. If I was happy, did you all of a sudden feel the happiness as if it was bursting out of me and straight into you? If, God forbid, I was angry, could you feel my anger raging out of me like steam shooting out of a boiling teapot? If you felt an emotion that I was feeling while being just near me, just anywhere near me, that's due to the intensity that I feel emotions. I feel emotions so strongly that it's literally like, water boiling over a pot. It just explodes out of me and onto anybody else, which is why I say, hopefully I was happy when you last saw me, because that's the best emotion to boil out of my body. But now I want you to think back to a time that you have felt sad. So just remember how that felt. I know it's not a good feeling, but please just go with me on this and just try to remember how feeling sad felt. But now multiply that feeling by 3. Now multiply it by 5. And taking your sadness multiplied by 5 is exactly how I felt after taking that Plan B pill. It hit me so hard that it was just almost unbearable, guys, and it was just awful. So now that you get the gist of how Plan B affected me during this already roller coaster of emotions with what was going on in my personal life at the time, and in combination to my recently diagnosed bipolar disorder, let's talk about a couple things that could have been done differently at the time that would have helped ease all of this pain. So the first thing is that it is really important to be able to talk openly about sex with your parents or with another trusted adult while you're still a kid. And when I say still a kid is like 20 and younger, guys. That's still a kid. Whether or not you think so. I mean, yeah, the government states that at 18 you are now an adult, but you're not an adult until after 20. And trust me from experience, because I am now 26 and a half, and I'm still sometimes not thought of as an adult, which drives me crazy because I make more adultier decisions than most adults do. And that was a mouthful. Okay, so why is it important to be able to have open conversations about sex with your parents or another trusted adult? Well, first of all, so you don't make dumb mistakes like I did, because I would hate for anyone to have to go through that same situation as me. And again, the general lack of sex education results in people making very dumb decisions and very big mistakes. But if you can talk to someone who's had sex before, specifically a trusted adult, an adult who's like not only had their fair share of sexual encounters, but also who is significantly older than you are. So like 30 plus, y'all. Don't be consulting anybody younger than the age of 30. If you're still a teenager and you're listening in, please. Because sometimes even 30-year-olds are not real adults. They're not. Again, trust me from experience. If you have somebody there that you can talk to about this, you have a much higher chance of not making those mistakes because you'll have someone to guide you through it. And y'all, I will say this as often as I can, but communication is key. Communication with what you're dealing with and what you're navigating and any situations in life is key to helping you get through it. Okay, y'all, we're all in here together. I said that wrong. Like High School Musical, we are all in this together, and hopefully some of you are from my generation and know about High School Musical, so I just didn't sound like a fool to everybody listening. You need to be able to talk to anybody, and I know it can be awkward and weird and uncomfortable, and especially if you've never done it before, and by done it, you know what I mean by done it. But guys, start talking. That way the kids like me don't end up asking their same age friend how to give a blowjob and other nonsense like that. So if you're listening in right now and you're not a child, then what I want you to do is I want you to be that trusted adult for somebody else. I want you to be a role model and someone that the younger generation can not only just look up to, but can come to you and ask for advice, and that you can give them good, sound advice. Because, guys, I wish I had somebody like that in my life. I wish that back then, at the time when I was going through all of this, that there was an adult that I could talk to about this. And even better, guys, I really wish that I would have had a good relationship with my mom to where I could just talk openly about sex with her in a non-judgmental, safe space. If I had been able to do that, I probably wouldn't have asked my friend for sex advice. I probably wouldn't have pressured my boyfriend into having sex with me. And I probably wouldn't have taken the Plan B pill in order to calm the freak out of possible pregnancy. It's a chain reaction. So if you are an adult listening who has children, I'm going to flip that around a little bit. I really hope that after listening in on this episode, that you'll start to understand the importance of being able to talk openly with your kids. And not like in a helicopter parent type way, like you're just trying to get information out of them. I just want you to be so involved in their life that if they come to you and say, hey, I'm going to have sex with my boyfriend, that you're able to calmly talk with them about it because they've already had discussions about sex with you before and it's not weird and it's not uncomfortable, and that they'll make the right decisions because of you and that you'll help guide them through whatever's best for them at the time. But if I had had a trusted adult back then at the time, I might have respected myself a little bit better. Hell, maybe I'd still be a virgin today, and I really doubt that, but one can innocently hope, right? If I had had the open communication about this that I needed at the time, that shame storm may have never existed. My depression may not have continued for so long as it did. And that last bit's the most important part, because the depression that I felt during this time here with taking the Plan B pill and the boyfriend at the time breaking up with me, that carried on for so many years after this experience. And unfortunately, it took me, I want to say, it probably took me a good 8 years to realize that I was depressed from that time until then. So we'll get into that more as we go through these episodes, but that's a long time to sit in depression and just let it continue piling up. So guys, just think about that for a moment. So if anyone needs this, I will have the resources regarding the Plan B pill in the show notes in case you need some more information. So please feel free to head on over to that if necessary. But I hope what you take away from today's episode is just that open communication with your child, your teenager, your younger cousin, your nephew, your niece, and just the younger generation in general is absolutely vital in their journey of life. So please just take that information with you today and have that be the one thing that you take away from this whole entire episode. And while I know that talking about sex with younger people, especially your younger mini-me, like your little child, could definitely be very weird and uncomfortable and probably hella awkward. But just start talking about it. The sooner you start talking about it and start talking about it more regularly, the easier it becomes. Just like riding a bike. It's my favorite analogy for things getting easier because I think that's everybody's go-to analogy for things to get easier. So, with all of that being said, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode. By the way, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you more than you probably know. So for next week, I'm going to talk about the following months after losing my virginity, how I felt, and what actions I felt compelled to take. Episode 8, You Think You Hurt Me? Well, don't play with fire if you don't want to get burned, is about some not so proud moments that followed after the whole virginity lost breakup fiasco. I'm cringing now just thinking about it, But it's really important to talk about my thought process and the emotional roller coaster that ensued after this tragic event. It's not exactly the prettiest time period in my life, but talking openly about it will hopefully help others from making the same mistakes that I did. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, take a screenshot of it and post it on social media. And don't forget to tag me at distressed2joyful_Bailey's Way on Instagram and include your thoughts. I'd love to hear your feedback, and especially if you tried any of the helpful tips that I've been giving out and just how it's impacted your life. So please also don't forget to hit that cute little subscribe button in order to stay updated with the latest episode releases. And I learned recently from my boyfriend that Spotify doesn't have a subscribe button. So if you're listening on iTunes, please hit subscribe. If not, then carry on with the day. Thanks. So until next time, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful. Bye.